The day I lost everything. I sat in the courtroom with my hands locked together, so tightly that my fingers hurt. The silence around me felt louder than any argument. 10 years of marriage had been reduced to a stack of papers resting on the judge's desk. I looked across the room. Victoria never looked back at me. She adjusted the sleeve of her expensive blazer and whispered something to her attorney. Then she smiled. That smile hurt more than the divorce itself. My lawyer leaned closer. "Mr. Carter," he whispered, "if you want to challenge the property agreement, we can still ask for another hearing." I slowly shook my head. "No. You understand what you're giving up?" "I do." "You'll lose the house." "I know." "The lake cabin." "I know." "The retirement accounts." "I know." "The investment portfolio." "I know." "The Mercedes." "I know." He sighed. "I've handled divorces for 20 years. Most people fight until the very end." I stared at the wooden floor. "I'm not most people." The judge adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Carter." I stood. "Yes, Your Honor. I want to confirm that you understand the settlement." "I do." "You are voluntarily agreeing to transfer ownership of the marital residence to Mrs. Carter." "Yes." "You also agree to the division of the savings accounts, investment accounts, furniture, vehicles, and other jointly owned assets." "Yes." "You understand that once this order is signed, these decisions become final." "I understand." She looked at me for several seconds. "You seem unusually calm." I smiled without happiness. "I've already spent a year losing my marriage. Today's just paperwork." The courtroom became quiet. Even Victoria looked at me for a second. Then she rolled her eyes. Her attorney stood. "Your Honor, my client simply wishes to move forward." The judge nodded. "I appreciate that." She looked at me again. "Mr. Carter, your attorney informed me you declined mediation several months ago." "Yes." "May I ask why?" I answered honestly. "Because you can't negotiate with someone who already left in her heart." Victoria laughed softly. "Oh, please." Her voice sounded cold. "You make everything dramatic." I looked at her. "For 10 years, I believed we were building a life together." She crossed her arms. "We were? So when did that stop?" She shrugged. "When you stopped being enough." Those words landed harder than any punch. I wanted to ask what she meant. Instead, I stayed quiet. The judge cleared her throat. "Mrs. Carter, let's remain respectful." Victoria smiled politely. "Of course." Then she looked back at me. "You always thought love was enough." I did. And I finally realized it wasn't. My lawyer whispered, "Don't respond." I nodded. He was right. There was nothing left to save. The judge signed the final page. The marriage between Ethan Carter and Victoria Carter is officially dissolved. The sound of her pen scratching across the paper echoed inside my chest. 10 years. Gone. Just like that. I remembered our wedding. The cheap little apartment. The nights we shared instant noodles because we couldn't afford restaurants. The promises. "I'll always stay. I'll never leave. I choose you." I wondered if she remembered saying those words. Or if I had been the only one who believed them. The judge spoke again. "I wish both of you peace moving forward." Victoria answered first. "Thank you, Your Honor." I simply nodded. The hearing ended. People began leaving. My lawyer placed a hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry. You did your job. I still feel like I failed you." I smiled faintly. "You didn't. I couldn't save half your assets." "You couldn't save a marriage that ended long before today." He looked down. "I suppose not." He handed me a small cardboard box. Inside were a few personal items from the house. My old watch, a framed photo of my parents, 3 books, a coffee mug with a cracked handle. That was all. 10 years fit inside one box. I picked it up. Outside the courtroom, Emma waited beside my sister Lily. The golden retriever saw me and immediately ran toward me. Her tail wagged so hard her whole body shook. I knelt. "Hey, girl." She pressed her head against my chest. I wrapped one arm around her neck. For the first time that day, I almost cried. Lily quietly handed me the leash. "You okay?" I laughed softly. "That's a dangerous question." You don't have to answer. I don't even know the answer. She squeezed my shoulder. Dad's waiting if you need him. I know. Victoria walked past us wearing sunglasses. Daniel wasn't far behind. He leaned against a black luxury SUV with a confident smile. Victoria stopped a few feet away. She looked at my cardboard box, then at Emma, then back at me. Well, she said with a laugh, I guess you're leaving with almost nothing. I looked down. Emma looked up at me with bright, trusting eyes. She didn't care about houses. She didn't care about bank accounts. She didn't care about expensive cars. She only cared that I came back. I smiled. I guess not. Victoria frowned. That's all you have to say? I clipped Emma's leash onto her collar. No. She waited. I looked straight into her eyes. You took everything the court could give you. She smirked. I certainly did. I glanced at Emma. But you couldn't take the one thing that actually loved me without conditions. Victoria's smile disappeared. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she shook her head. Goodbye, Ethan. I nodded. Goodbye, Victoria. I didn't look back. Lily carried the box while I walked beside Emma toward an old blue pickup truck waiting across the parking lot. My father had borrowed it from a friend because I no longer owned a car. I opened the passenger door. Emma jumped inside without hesitation. She settled into the seat and looked at me like she trusted wherever we were going. I climbed behind the wheel. The engine rattled. The truck smelled like old leather and sawdust. It wasn't much, but it was enough. I took one last look at the courthouse through the windshield. I had lost my wife, my home, my savings, my future as I once imagined it. Yet somehow, sitting beside a dog who never stopped believing in me, I felt a tiny piece of hope. I started the engine. As the courthouse disappeared in my rearview mirror, I couldn't tell whether my life had just ended or whether it had finally begun. The empty apartment. The apartment manager handed me a single brass key and gave me an apologetic smile. I'm sorry it isn't bigger. I looked around the small hallway. It doesn't have to be. It's the last one we had available. I'll make it work. She unlocked the door. The apartment was barely large enough for a bed, a tiny kitchen table, an old couch, and a narrow window that overlooked the parking lot. Emma walked inside first. She sniffed every corner before looking back at me as if asking, Is this home now? I forced a smile. I guess it is. The manager cleared her throat. If you need anything, apartment 12 is the office. Thank you. After she left, silence filled the room. I placed my cardboard box on the floor. Emma sat beside it. I laughed quietly. That's everything we own now. She wagged her tail. I know. It's not much. She nudged my hand. I scratched behind her ears. You're easier to impress than people. She leaned against my leg. For the first time since the divorce, I didn't feel completely alone. An hour later, someone knocked. I opened the door. Dad stood there carrying 2 folding chairs. I figured you didn't own any. I smiled. You guessed right. He walked inside and looked around. This place is small. It is, but it's clean. It is, and nobody can throw you out. I laughed. I already paid the first month's rent. He unfolded one chair. I brought dinner. You didn't have to. I wanted to. He placed 2 containers of homemade stew on the little table. Emma immediately sat beside him. Dad chuckled. I knew she'd remember me. You've always spoiled her. I spoil everyone who deserves it. We sat across from each other. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally, he asked, How are you really doing? I stared into the bowl. I don't know. You miss her. I miss who I thought she was. He nodded slowly. That's different. It feels different. He took another bite. You know what hurts me the most? What? I watched you disappear. I looked up. What do you mean? You stopped being Ethan. I was married. You made marriage your entire identity. I stayed quiet. He continued. Remember when Oliver invited you into that architecture competition? I sighed. I remember. You won first place. I turned down the prize. You know why that still bothers me? Because you thought I deserved it. No, He looked me straight in the eyes. Because you deserved it. I remember that day. Victoria had smiled while saying, "That competition pays almost nothing. Why waste weekends on it? We should focus on buying a bigger house." So I declined, not because I wanted to, because I wanted to make her happy. Dad shook his head. "You gave away pieces of yourself one decision at a time. I thought that's what love meant." "No. What does it mean?" "It means growing together." He pointed at me, not disappearing. That evening, Lily arrived carrying groceries. She looked around the apartment. "You definitely need help decorating." I laughed. "I definitely need furniture first." She placed bags on the counter. "I bought groceries." "You shouldn't spend money on me." "It's my money." "I'll pay you back." "No." She folded her arms. "If you argue, I'm taking the bread home." I smiled. "Fine." She unpacked everything. Coffee, eggs, bread, pasta, dog treats. I picked up the treats. "You remembered Emma." Lily smiled. "I remembered the family member who never betrayed you." Emma barked happily. I opened the bag and handed her one. Lily leaned against the counter. "Can I ask something?" "You usually do." "When was the last time you did something just because you wanted to?" I thought for a long time. "I don't know." "Think harder." I tried. Nothing came. Finally, I whispered, "Maybe 10 years ago." She looked heartbroken. "I was afraid you'd say that." Later that night, I unpacked my clothes. Most of the closet stayed empty. Emma followed me from room to room. Kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, living room. She never let me out of her sight. I smiled. "Afraid I'll leave?" She simply sat beside me again. The next morning, I opened my phone. A notification appeared. Victoria Carter posted new photos. I hesitated. Then I opened them. Victoria stood beside Daniel on a yacht. Another picture showed champagne glasses. Another showed a luxury hotel. Another caption read, "Finally living the life I deserve." I stared until the screen blurred. Emma rested her head against my leg. I whispered, "That was fast." Another photo appeared. Daniel had his arm around her waist. They looked happy, or at least they wanted everyone to believe they were. I locked my phone. My chest felt tight. Emma nudged my hand. "I know." She looked at me with those same patient eyes. I shouldn't have looked. She sighed softly and lay beside my feet. That afternoon, Dad called. "You busy?" "Not really. Come help me fix my porch." I haven't picked up tools in years. "So, I'll probably make it worse." "You learn from me." I also forgot. "Then remember." I smiled. "I'll be there." While replacing loose boards, Dad suddenly asked, "Remember your 32nd birthday?" I laughed bitterly. "I barely celebrated." "You canceled dinner." "Victoria had a business dinner, and you went with her." "I thought she needed support." "You needed your family." I remembered Lily calling that night. "We're all waiting." "I can't make it." "Again?" "I'm sorry." Back then, I believed sacrifice proved love. Now, I wondered whether it had only proved fear. Dad tightened another screw. "Life keeps score, son." "What does that mean?" "You can invest everything into the wrong person and lose it." "You can." He smiled gently. "But you can also invest in yourself." Days passed. Every morning I worked. Every evening I returned to the tiny apartment. Emma always waited by the door. She wagged her tail like I had been gone for years instead of hours. I'd kneel beside her. "I'm home." She never asked whether I was successful. She never cared how much money I had left. She never questioned whether I was worth loving. She simply loved me. One rainy evening, I sat on the old couch scrolling through more pictures of Victoria's perfect new life. Every smile felt like another knife. Every expensive dinner reminded me of overtime shifts I had worked to give her those same experiences. Every vacation photo made me wonder whether I had ever truly known my own wife. I turned the phone face down. "I'm tired, Emma." She climbed onto the couch, rested her head on my knee, and closed her eyes. I gently stroked her golden fur. The apartment was still empty. My future was still uncertain. My heart was still broken. But as I looked at the only soul who had stayed beside me when everything else disappeared, I realized something simple. Not everyone walks away when life becomes difficult. Some stay. And sometimes, the ones who stay are worth more than everything you lost. The empty apartment. The apartment manager handed me a single brass key and gave me an apologetic smile. I'm sorry it isn't bigger. I looked around the small hallway. It doesn't have to be. It's the last one we had available. I'll make it work. She unlocked the door. The apartment was barely large enough for a bed, a tiny kitchen table, an old couch, and a narrow window that overlooked the parking lot. Emma walked inside first. She sniffed every corner before looking back at me as if asking, "Is this home now?" I forced a smile. "I guess it is." The manager cleared her throat. "If you need anything, apartment 12 is the office." "Thank you." After she left, silence filled the room. I placed my cardboard box on the floor. Emma sat beside it. I laughed quietly. "That's everything we own now." She wagged her tail. "I know. It's not much." She nudged my hand. I scratched behind her ears. "You're easier to impress than people." She leaned against my leg. For the first time since the divorce, I didn't feel completely alone. An hour later, someone knocked. I opened the door. Dad stood there carrying 2 folding chairs. "I figured you didn't own any." I smiled. "You guessed right." He walked inside and looked around. "This place is small." "It is. But it's clean." "It is. And nobody can throw you out." I laughed. "I already paid the first month's rent." He unfolded one chair. "I brought dinner." "You didn't have to." "I wanted to." He placed 2 containers of homemade stew on the little table. Emma immediately sat beside him. Dad chuckled. I knew she'd remember me. "You've always spoiled her." "I spoil everyone who deserves it." We sat across from each other. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally, he asked, "How are you really doing?" I stared into the bowl. "I don't know." "You miss her." "I miss who I thought she was." He nodded slowly. "That's different. It feels different." He took another bite. "You know what hurts me the most?" "What?" "I watched you disappear." I looked up. "What do you mean?" "You stopped being Ethan." "I was married." "You made marriage your entire identity." I stayed quiet. He continued. "Remember when Oliver invited you into that architecture competition?" I sighed. "I remember. You won first place." I turned down the prize. "You know why that still bothers me?" "Because you thought I deserved it." "No." He looked me straight in the eyes. "Because you deserved it." I remember that day. Victoria had smiled while saying, "That competition pays almost nothing. Why waste weekends on it? We should focus on buying a bigger house." So I declined, not because I wanted to, because I wanted to make her happy. Dad shook his head. "You gave away pieces of yourself one decision at a time. I thought that's what love meant." "No." "What does it mean?" "It means growing together." He pointed at me, not disappearing. That evening, Lily arrived carrying groceries. She looked around the apartment. "You definitely need help decorating." I laughed. "I definitely need furniture first." She placed bags on the counter. "I bought groceries." "You shouldn't spend money on me." "It's my money." "I'll pay you back." "No." She folded her arms. "If you argue, I'm taking the bread home." I smiled. "Fine." She unpacked everything. Coffee, eggs, bread, pasta, dog treats. I picked up the treats. "You remembered Emma." Lily smiled. "I remembered the family member who never betrayed you." Emma barked happily. I opened the bag and handed her one. Lily leaned against the counter. "Can I ask something?" "You usually do." "When was the last time you did something just because you wanted to?" I thought for a long time. "I don't know." "Think harder." I tried. Nothing came. Finally, I whispered, "Maybe 10 years ago." She looked heartbroken. "I was afraid you'd say that." Later that night, I unpacked my clothes. Most of the closet stayed empty. Emma followed me from room to room. Kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, living room. She never let me out of her sight. I smiled. Afraid I'll leave? She simply sat beside me again. The next morning I opened my phone. A notification appeared. Victoria Carter posted new photos. I hesitated. Then I opened them. Victoria stood beside Daniel on a yacht. Another picture showed champagne glasses. Another showed a luxury hotel. Another caption read, "Finally living the life I deserve." I stared until the screen blurred. Emma rested her head against my leg. I whispered, "That was fast." Another photo appeared. Daniel had his arm around her waist. They looked happy, or at least they wanted everyone to believe they were. I locked my phone. My chest felt tight. Emma nudged my hand. I know. She looked at me with those same patient eyes. I shouldn't have looked. She sighed softly and lay beside my feet. That afternoon, Dad called. "You busy?" "Not really. Come help me fix my porch. I haven't picked up tools in years. So, I'll probably make it worse." You learn from me. I also forgot. Then remember, I smiled. "I'll be there." While replacing loose boards, Dad suddenly asked, "Remember your 32nd birthday?" I laughed bitterly. I barely celebrated. You canceled dinner. Victoria had a business dinner, and you went with her. I thought she needed support. You needed your family. I remembered Lily calling that night. "We're all waiting." "I can't make it." "Again?" "I'm sorry." Back then, I believed sacrifice proved love. Now, I wondered whether it had only proved fear. Dad tightened another screw. "Life keeps score, son." "What does that mean?" "You can invest everything into the wrong person and lose it." "You can." He smiled gently. "But you can also invest in yourself." Days passed. Every morning I worked. Every evening I returned to the tiny apartment. Emma always waited by the door. She wagged her tail like I had been gone for years instead of hours. I'd kneel beside her. "I'm home." She never asked whether I was successful. She never cared how much money I had left. She never questioned whether I was worth loving. She simply loved me. One rainy evening, I sat on the old couch scrolling through more pictures of Victoria's perfect new life. Every smile felt like another knife. Every expensive dinner reminded me of overtime shifts I had worked to give her those same experiences. Every vacation photo made me wonder whether I had ever truly known my own wife. I turned the phone face down. "I'm tired, Emma." She climbed onto the couch, rested her head on my knee, and closed her eyes. I gently stroked her golden fur. The apartment was still empty. My future was still uncertain. My heart was still broken. But as I looked at the only soul who had stayed beside me when everything else disappeared, I realized something simple. Not everyone walks away when life becomes difficult. Some stay. And sometimes, the ones who stay are worth more than everything you lost. The offer that changed my life. The next evening, I stood outside the restaurant 10 minutes early with my sketchbook tucked under my arm. Emma couldn't come inside, so Lily had agreed to watch her. Before leaving, I had knelt beside Emma. "I'll be back soon." She rested her head against my chest. "I know. You still don't trust me to leave for 2 hours." Her tail wagged anyway. Oliver Reed arrived exactly on time. He smiled and shook my hand. "Mr. Carter." "Please call me Ethan." "Then you have to call me Oliver." "Deal." We sat near the window. After ordering dinner, he pointed at my sketchbook. "May I?" I slid it across the table. He spent several quiet minutes turning each page. Finally, he closed it. "Who told you to stop drawing?" The question surprised me. "No one." He smiled. "That's not true." I looked away. "Life happened." "No." He leaned forward. "Someone convinced you that safe was better than meaningful." I laughed softly. "You know more than you should." I've met hundreds of talented people. And the saddest ones aren't the failures. Who are they? The people who gave up before trying. I nodded slowly. I was one of them. I noticed the correction. Not anymore. The waiter brought dinner. Neither of us touched it immediately. Oliver opened a folder. "I've been searching for a partner." My eyebrows lifted. "A partner?" "Yes." "I thought you wanted to hire me." "I could." He smiled. But I won't. I stared at him. I'm not following. I don't need another employee. What do you need? I need someone who can build things I can't imagine. I laughed. You're giving me far too much credit. No. He tapped my sketchbook. These drawings already earned it. I stayed silent. He slid a document toward me. I want us to start a company together. I blinked. I think you handed me the wrong file. I didn't. You don't even know me. I know your work. That's different. It isn't. I looked down at the proposal. My hands started shaking. This wasn't a job offer. This was ownership, a real partnership, the opportunity one had dreamed about for years. Then an old memory crashed into my mind. I remembered sitting at our dining table years earlier. Victoria had looked over a similar offer. She frowned. A startup. It could become something huge. It could also fail. It might. She folded the papers. I don't want uncertainty. It would mean owning part of the company. I'd rather you keep your salary. We'd be taking a chance. No. She pushed the papers back. We need stability. The next morning I declined the offer. I never stopped wondering what might have happened. Oliver's voice pulled me back. Ethan? Sorry. You disappeared. I was remembering something. Bad memory? I turned down this exact opportunity once. And why won't you this time? I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure. That night, I drove to my father's house. He was sanding an old wooden chair. You look nervous. I am. What happened? I handed him Oliver's proposal. He adjusted his glasses and read every page. When he finished, he smiled. This is impressive. I know. So what's the problem? What if I fail? He laughed. I've been waiting for that question. You have? For years. He placed the papers on the workbench. Ethan. Yeah. Who taught you to be afraid? I don't know. I do. I frowned. When you were little, you'd climb every tree in the neighborhood. I remember. You fell. A lot. You'd get up. I did. He smiled. Then somewhere along the way, you stopped climbing. I looked down. I guess I did. No. He shook his head. You let someone convince you that falling was worse than never trying. I didn't defend myself. Because he was right. I built my entire life around avoiding risk. And where did it get you? I looked at the divorce papers still sitting in my truck. Here. He nodded. You already survived losing almost everything. I did. So what exactly are you still afraid of? I couldn't answer. The next morning, Mia found me staring at the proposal again. She sat across from me. Big decision? The biggest. She read the cover page. Her eyes widened. Oliver Reed? Yeah. He wants you? He wants a business partner. She stared at me. So why are you sitting here? I don't know if I'm ready. She laughed. I knew you'd say that. You did. Ethan. What? You spent years asking everyone else for permission. I don't anymore. She raised an eyebrow. Really? I sighed. Maybe a little. A lot. She pointed toward the window. Tell me something. What? If this offer had come 10 years ago before your marriage, I would have accepted immediately. So what's changed? I have more to lose. She smiled gently. No. What do you mean? You already lost everything. Her words hit me harder than she probably intended. Then she reached across the table. You don't need permission anymore. I took a deep breath. I don't. No. She smiled. So stop living like you're still asking for it. That afternoon, I called Oliver. He answered on the second ring. I was wondering when you'd call. I've made my decision. And I accept. He laughed. I was hoping you'd say that. When do we start? Tomorrow. The first few months were exhausting. We rented a small office, hired a tiny team, worked 12-hour days. Some nights I slept on the office couch. Other nights I came home too tired to cook. Emma never complained. She simply greeted me every evening as though I had accomplished something amazing. Slowly, project arrived. clients returned. Recommendations spread. For the first time in years, people wanted my ideas instead of asking me to ignore them. Every successful design rebuilt another piece of the confidence I thought I'd lost forever. One evening, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. I opened it. A screenshot. Victoria had posted another glamorous picture online. This time she stood beside Daniel inside a luxury boutique. The caption read, "Shopping with the best man I've ever known." Before I could close the image, another message arrived. It was from Lily. "Don't believe social media." I smiled. "Why?" She replied almost immediately. "A friend saw them yesterday. They argued in public, loudly." I frowned. Later that week, I accidentally ran into one of Victoria's old co-workers at a coffee shop. She hesitated before speaking. "You heard?" "Heard what?" She lowered her voice. "Daniel doesn't let Victoria go anywhere alone anymore." I looked surprised. "What do you mean?" He checks her phone. "Seriously?" "Every day." I stayed quiet. He made her stop talking to several friends. Victoria agreed to that? Apparently. I remembered all the times Victoria had accused me of being too controlling simply because I worried when she worked late. Now, she was living with a man who truly controlled everything. For the first time, I wondered if she was beginning to see the difference. 3 months later, Oliver walked into my office holding a thick envelope. He grinned before saying a word. "Open it." "What is it?" "Our answer." I tore open the envelope. Inside was an official letter. My eyes widened. "We got it." Oliver laughed. "We got it. The Riverside Development Project? Every single phase." I looked at him in disbelief. This is the biggest contract we've ever bid on. And now it's ours. I smiled so hard my face hurt. Months earlier, I had walked away from a courthouse believing my life was over. Now I stood inside my own company, holding the contract that proved my future had only just begun. Cracks behind their perfect life. Winning the Riverside Development Project changed everything. The office became busier. Our phones rang all day. New clients scheduled meetings weeks in advance. People who had never returned my calls before suddenly wanted lunch with me. Oliver noticed my expression one afternoon and laughed. "You're uncomfortable." "A little." "Why?" "I spent years trying to prove I mattered. And now everyone suddenly acts like I always did." He smiled. "Success is a funny way of changing people's memories. I don't want it to change mine." "It won't." "How do you know?" "Because you still bring your own coffee instead of asking someone else to." I laughed. "That's your test." "It's one of them." Emma became the most popular member of the company. Every morning she greeted everyone at the front door. "Good morning, Emma." She barked happily. One of our interns knelt beside her. I think she's happier to see me than my own family. I smiled. She doesn't judge anyone. Another employee laughed. She definitely judges people. "Oh." If someone skips saying hello, she follows them until they apologize. The office filled with laughter. Emma walked into my office carrying a tennis ball. I looked down. "Meeting?" She dropped the ball. "I guess that's a no." Oliver passed my door. "Is the boss asking for another break?" "The real boss is." He smiled. "I've accepted that." Every afternoon, someone volunteered to take Emma for a short walk. She made stressful days feel lighter. Watching her reminded me that joy could exist without expensive things. One evening, Oliver asked, "You've changed?" "I hope that's a good thing." "It is." "How?" "You celebrate victories." "I always did." "No." He shook his head. "You used to celebrate by worrying about the next problem." I laughed. "That's fair." "Now you actually smile." "I forgot how." "You remembered." I looked around the office. It feels different. "Why?" "Nobody here wants me to become someone else." Oliver nodded. "That's because we hired you for who you already are." His words stayed with me all day. At home, life remained simple. The apartment was still small. The furniture was still old. Emma still stole one of my socks every morning. Nothing looked luxurious. Yet I felt richer than I had inside the mansion Victoria kept after the divorce. Dad visited one weekend. He looked around and smiled. You know what I notice? What? You laugh more. I do. You didn't even realize it. He sat on the couch. I'm proud of you. For winning the contract? No, for surviving. I looked at him quietly. That's harder than success. Meanwhile, rumors about Victoria slowly reached me. I didn't ask for them. People simply talked. One afternoon, Lily called. You busy? Just finished work. I ran into Ashley, Victoria's old co-worker. Yeah. What happened? Lily hesitated. Apparently Victoria isn't posting as much anymore. People get bored of social media. It's more than that. What do you mean? Daniel controls all their money. I frowned. I thought they were both wealthy. So did everyone else. Several days later, another conversation surprised me. I stopped by a coffee shop before work. While waiting in line, I heard someone call my name. Ethan. I turned around. A woman about my age smiled politely. I'm Grace. I'm sorry. Grace Brooks. The last name caught my attention. Brooks. My ex-husband is Daniel Brooks. I froze. She noticed immediately. You've heard of him? I have. She sighed. I thought so. I didn't know what to say. She asked quietly, Can we talk for 5 minutes? We sat near the window. She wrapped both hands around her coffee. I know this sounds strange. It does. But I'm not here because of you. Then why? Because another woman is about to lose everything. I already knew who she meant. She continued. I tried warning people before. No one believed you. They believed Daniel. What happened? She gave a tired smile. The same thing that always happens. She reached into her purse and placed several folded papers on the table. What are these? Court records. I looked through them. Business lawsuits, unpaid loans, tax problems, bankruptcy filings. My stomach tightened. These are real. Every one. But he acts like he's incredibly successful. He always does. I looked at her. Why are you showing me this? Because someone has to tell Victoria. I stayed quiet. I tried contacting her. And she blocked me. I slowly folded the papers. I'm sorry. She smiled sadly. So was I. That evening I couldn't stop thinking about the conversation. Emma rested beside my chair while I stared out the apartment window. I whispered, Should I warn her? Emma tilted her head. I know. It wasn't my responsibility anymore. Still, part of me remembered loving Victoria. Part of me didn't want anyone to suffer that way. I picked up my phone. Then I put it back down. She wouldn't believe me anyway. A week later, Lily called again. You won't believe this. What happened now? A friend of mine works at Victoria's bank. I don't need details. I'm not giving private information. Then what? Victoria apparently had a huge argument with Daniel. I sighed. Lily, listen. He refused to explain where their money went. I stayed silent. She continued. And someone contacted Victoria. Who? Daniel's ex-wife. I almost dropped my phone. Grace. You know her? I met her. You did. Long story. Lily lowered her voice. My friend heard Victoria screaming. What was she saying? Tell me these documents are fake. I closed my eyes. Grace had reached her after all. Days passed. More rumors spread. Daniel dismissed every accusation. It's all lies. I've heard that before. My ex-wife is obsessed. Then explained the lawsuits. They're owed. The debts. Handled. The bankruptcies. Business risks. According to people who overheard them, Victoria wanted answers. Daniel only became angrier. The perfect pictures disappeared from social media. Luxury dinners stopped. Weekend vacations ended. Friends stopped receiving invitations. One by one, people quietly drifted away from them. Back at my office, life continued moving forward. We hired new designers, expanded into a larger workspace, celebrated birthdays together. Emma attended every celebration as if she owned the company. One afternoon, she climbed into my lap during a meeting. The entire room laughed. Oliver pointed at her. I think she's asking for voting rights. I scratched behind her ears. She already has more influence than I do. The laughter reminded me how different happiness felt when it wasn't forced. Nearly 2 months later, I received another unexpected phone call. It was Grace. I'm sorry to bother you. You're not. I thought you should know. What happened? She paused. He did it again. My stomach tightened. Daniel? Yes. What did he do? He emptied every joint account. I stood from my desk. What? He transferred the money. When? Last night. And Victoria? He disappeared before sunrise. I couldn't speak. Grace sighed heavily. I warned her. I slowly looked out the office window. Somewhere across the city, the glamorous life Victoria had chosen was collapsing faster than our marriage ever had. For the second time in her life, she was standing in an empty house. Only this time, there was no one left beside her. The woman who came back too late. Almost 6 months passed after Daniel disappeared. Our company continued growing. We hired more people, opened a second office, and started planning projects I once believed were far beyond my reach. Life wasn't perfect. It was simply honest. Every morning, Emma still greeted every employee before making her rounds through the building. Oliver often joked, if she ever quits, morale drops by 50%. Emma accepted the compliment by stealing his sandwich whenever he wasn't looking. You see, Oliver laughed one afternoon. She's definitely management. I smiled. She's the only one who keeps us humble. One rainy Thursday afternoon, I finished a meeting and walked toward the front entrance. The receptionist stood as soon as she saw me. Ethan? Yeah. Someone's been waiting outside for almost an hour. A client. She hesitated. I think it's personal. I looked through the glass doors. A woman stood beneath the awning. Her coat looked too thin for the weather. Her shoulders were slumped. Her hair, once perfectly styled every day, hung loosely around her face. For a moment, I didn't recognize her. Then she slowly looked up. Victoria. My heart skipped once. Not because I still loved her, because I remembered the woman she used to be. I opened the door. Victoria. She tried to smile. Hi, Ethan. Her voice sounded smaller than I had ever heard it. What are you doing here? Can we talk? I stayed quiet. She quickly added, if you don't want to, I'll understand. I looked back inside. Mia had stepped into the hallway after noticing us. Our eyes met. She gave me a small nod. Not approval, not disapproval. Just a reminder that the choice was mine. I looked back at Victoria. Come inside. We sat in a small meeting room. Emma walked in behind me and immediately lay beside my chair. Victoria watched her for a moment. She looks happy. She is. I've missed her. Emma looked at Victoria. Her ears lifted, but she didn't move. Victoria noticed. So she remembers me. She remembers everyone. Silence settled between us. Finally, she whispered, I don't even know where to start. I folded my hands. Start with the truth. She nodded slowly. I thought money would make me happy. I said nothing. I thought a bigger house meant a better life. Still nothing. I thought Daniel loved me. She laughed bitterly. I was wrong about almost everything. I watched tears gather in her eyes. He took everything. I looked at her quietly. I know. You heard. People talk. She lowered her head. I deserve that. No. She looked surprised. I deserve consequences. Yes. But nobody deserves abuse. Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. I kept thinking about the day we divorced. I remained silent. You said I took everything the court could give me. I remember. You were right. She covered her face. I thought I won. Iled. For once, I didn't try to fix her pain. After several minutes, she wiped her eyes. I owe you an apology. You don't owe me anything. I do. She looked directly at me. I'm sorry. I didn't answer. She continued. I'm sorry for every time I made you feel like you weren't enough. I swallowed quietly. I'm sorry for every dream I talked you out of. Another tear slipped down her cheek. I'm sorry I only noticed what you earned instead of who you were. The room stayed silent. She whispered, I love what you gave me. My chest tightened. I didn't love you the way you deserved. Those words hurt more than the divorce itself, because they were honest. She looked around the office. This place is beautiful. Thank you. You built it. We built it. She smiled faintly. I always underestimated you. No. She frowned. What do you mean? You underestimated what happened when someone finally believed in me. She looked down. I never did. I know. Another long silence followed. Finally, she asked, Is there someone else? I thought about Mia, her patience, her honesty, the way she never tried to control me. I don't know. Victoria nodded. I hope there is. That answer surprised me. You deserve someone who loves a man, not the paycheck. I looked away. I wanted that person to be you. I know. I'm sorry. The meeting room door opened slightly. Mia peeked inside. Everything okay? I nodded. We're fine. She smiled politely at Victoria. I'll be downstairs. Then she quietly closed the door again. Victoria watched the door for a second. She cares about you. She does. And she trusted you enough to make this decision alone. I smiled. She respects me. Victoria whispered. I never understood how important that was. She reached into her purse and removed something wrapped in tissue paper. I found this while packing. She handed it to me. I slowly unwrapped it. Inside was the old wedding photograph from our first apartment. Not the expensive ceremony. Not the luxury reception. Just a picture of two young people laughing on a tiny balcony with cheap plastic chairs behind them. I smiled sadly. I remember this day. So do I. We had almost nothing. She laughed through her tears. And somehow we smiled more. Neither of us spoke. Finally she asked, Do you ever miss us? I answered honestly. I miss who we thought we were. She nodded. So do I. She stood. I didn't come here asking you to take me back. I looked surprised. I know I destroyed that chance. She took a deep breath. I came because I couldn't live with myself without saying I was sorry. I stood as well. Thank you. She looked confused. For what? For apologizing. You forgive me? I thought carefully before answering. Yes. Fresh tears filled her eyes again. Really? Yes. She smiled hopefully. Does that mean... I gently interrupted. No. The hope disappeared from her face. I forgive you. I took a slow breath. But forgiveness isn't the same as going backward. She lowered her eyes. I understand. The man you divorced spent every day trying to earn your approval. She quietly nodded. He doesn't exist anymore. I wasn't angry. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I was simply telling the truth. I finally learned that my worth isn't something another person gets to decide. She covered her mouth as she cried. I wish I had understood that sooner. So do I. We walked together toward the front entrance. Rain had stopped. The evening sun broke through the clouds. Victoria looked at Emma one last time. She knelt. Come here, girl. Emma stood. For a second, my heart wondered what she would do. Emma walked toward Victoria. She sniffed her hand gently. Victoria smiled through her tears. I miss you too. She rubbed Emma's head one last time. Then Emma quietly turned around, walked back to me, and sat beside my leg without hesitation. Victoria watched the moment in silence. Then she smiled sadly. I guess she knows where home is. I looked down at Emma. So do I? Victoria nodded. Goodbye, Ethan. This time, her voice carried no pride, no anger, only acceptance. Goodbye, Victoria. She walked toward the street without looking back. I stood there with Emma, sitting calmly beside me. The woman I had once believed I couldn't live without disappeared into the distance. I felt no desire to chase her, no need to explain myself, no anger, only peace. As Emma leaned gently against my leg, I realized something I had never understood during my marriage. Loving someone enough to forgive them did not mean loving them enough to lose myself again. The price of every choice. 2 months passed after Victoria visited my office. Life kept moving. The company continued growing. New projects filled my calendar. Employees laughed in the hallways. Emma still believed every visitor came only to see her. One morning, Oliver walked into my office, holding a newspaper. "You should probably see this." He placed it on my desk. The headline immediately caught my attention. Local developer arrested in multi-million-dollar fraud case. Under the headline was Daniel's photograph. I stared at it for several seconds. Oliver spoke quietly. "They finally caught him." I nodded. "It looks that way. He'll probably be in court for a long time." "I imagine so." Oliver studied my face. I expected a bigger reaction. I folded the newspaper. "What kind?" "A smile." I shook my head. "I don't feel like smiling." No. He leaned against the door. "Why not?" I thought for a moment. "Because another person's downfall doesn't rebuild the years I lost." Oliver smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." News spread quickly. Television stations covered the story. Business magazines published investigations. Former partners stepped forward with evidence. The list of victims became longer every week. One afternoon, Lily called. "Did you hear?" I read the news. Apparently, there were more lawsuits than anyone knew. "I believe it." She hesitated. "Victoria's involved, too." My stomach tightened. "Involved how?" "Not criminally." I waited. "Most of the property she kept during the divorce is tied up in legal claims." I slowly sat down. "The house?" "Yes." "The investments?" "Some of them." "The savings?" "A lot disappeared paying debts she never knew existed." I closed my eyes. So she really lost everything. Almost. A few days later, I met Dad for lunch. He had already ordered coffee. "You've been thinking too much." "You can tell." "You always stir your coffee when you're worried." I looked down. He smiled. "Still doing it." I laughed quietly. "I guess some habits survive." We sat in comfortable silence for a minute. Finally, I asked, "Do you believe in karma?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked out the diner window. "I think people misunderstand it." "What do you mean?" "They expect lightning. They expect dramatic revenge." "Exactly." He looked back at me. "Real karma is usually quieter." "How?" He picked up his cup. "If I ignore my health for 20 years. He shrugged. "I don't need the universe to punish me. The consequences already exist." I nodded slowly. If someone builds a relationship on lies, they eventually have to live inside those lies. He smiled gently. "Karma isn't always something that happens to us." "What is it then?" "It's often something we create." His words settled deep inside me. That weekend, Emma and I walked through the neighborhood park. Mrs. Harper waved from a bench. "Morning, Ethan." "Morning." She looked at Emma. "She's getting spoiled." "I know." Emma happily accepted another dog biscuit. Mrs. Harper smiled. "She deserves it." As we continued walking, I realized something. People now greeted me by name. Children ran toward Emma. Neighbors invited me to barbecues. Without noticing, I had quietly built a new life. Not through money, not through status, through simple kindness. Monday afternoon, Mia knocked on my office door. "You busy?" "Only pretending." She laughed. "I have tickets." "For what?" "An outdoor concert." I smiled. "You remembered I like jazz?" "You mentioned it once." "I'm impressed." "So?" She raised an eyebrow. "Are you saying yes?" "I haven't been to a concert in years." "That's not an answer." I laughed. "Then yes." The concert was simple. Food trucks, string lights, families sitting on blankets. Emma lay between us while music drifted through the evening air. Mia looked at me. "You're smiling." "I am." "You didn't notice." "I guess not." She looked toward the stage. "I like this version of you." "What version?" "The one who isn't trying to impress anyone." I thought about that. I spent years believing I had to earn love. And now, I think real love doesn't keep score. She smiled softly. "I agree. Neither of us rushed the conversation. Neither of us filled every silence. It felt comfortable, natural. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of simply being myself. Several weeks later, Lily called again. I saw Victoria today. I listened quietly. She moved. Where? A small apartment across town. I pictured my own tiny apartment after the divorce. How did she look? Tired. I stayed silent. But different. In what way? Humble. That word stayed with me. Humble. Maybe suffering had taught her what success never could. Maybe not. Either way, it was no longer my journey. One afternoon, I received an unexpected message. It was from Victoria. Only one sentence. Thank you for forgiving me. I'm trying to become someone better. I read it twice. Then I replied, I hope you find peace. Nothing more. Nothing less. I placed the phone back into my pocket. Mia looked over from her desk. Everything okay? Yeah. You look lighter. I think I finally let go. She smiled. I'm glad. That evening, Dad stopped by the office. He watched everyone working together. Emma slept near the reception desk, while two interns quietly argued over whose turn it was to take her for a walk. Dad laughed. I've never seen a dog with employees. I smiled. She's very demanding. He looked around. You built something beautiful. We all did. No. He shook his head. I don't mean the company. I looked at him. You built a life. His words caught me off guard. I glanced around the office. Friends, laughter, purpose, trust. Everything I once believed money could buy had actually been built through people who chose to stay. As we locked the office that night, Mia walked beside me. Can I ask you something? Always. If you could go back. She hesitated. Would you change everything? I looked at the evening sky. Years ago, I would have answered immediately. Now, I thought carefully. I wouldn't wish that pain on anyone. She nodded. But if none of it had happened, I smiled at Emma walking happily ahead of us. I never would have found the life I have now. Mia smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. We reached my truck. She looked at me. No speeches tonight? I laughed. I think I've finally run out. I doubt that. We both smiled. As I drove home with Emma asleep in the passenger seat, I realized something that once seemed impossible. I wasn't successful because my business was growing. I wasn't happy because Daniel had been arrested. I wasn't healing because Victoria regretted leaving. I was finally happy because, after years of chasing approval from everyone else, I had learned to wake up every morning without needing anyone's permission to believe I was enough. For the first time in my adult life, that was more than enough. The one thing she could never replace. 1 year. Sometimes I couldn't believe an entire year had passed since I walked out of the courthouse, carrying one cardboard box and Emma's leash. So much had changed, and somehow, the things that mattered most had stayed beautifully simple. Every evening, when I pulled into my driveway, Emma still waited behind the front window. The moment she heard my truck, her tail started wagging so hard that her entire body shook. As soon as I opened the front door, she hurried toward me. I'm home. She barked happily. I know. I knelt beside her. You've greeted me like this every single day. She rested her head against my shoulder. And somehow it never gets old. The new house wasn't enormous. It wasn't designed to impress anyone. It had a warm kitchen, a small garden, a comfortable office where I could sketch late into the night. Most importantly, it felt peaceful. Nobody argued over furniture. Nobody measured happiness by price tags. It simply felt like home. One Saturday morning, Dad stopped by carrying a toolbox. You finally buying shelves? I figured the walls looked lonely. He laughed. You become practical. I learned from you. He looked around the house. I'm proud of this place. I know. No, he smiled. I'm proud because you built it for yourself. Not for approval. Not for appearances. Not to prove anything. For yourself. I nodded quietly. I finally understand the difference. Business continued growing. Oliver walked into my office one afternoon, holding another signed contract. You know what I realized? What? You don't celebrate with expensive watches. I laughed. I already know what time it is. You don't celebrate with sports cars. I like my truck. You don't even celebrate by taking days off. I probably should. He smiled. Maybe that's your next lesson. Emma walked between us, carrying her favorite tennis ball. Oliver pointed at her. I think she agrees. Mia knocked on the open door. The charity event starts in 2 hours. I almost forgot. You've been buried in work. I know. She smiled. I'll drive. The event filled a downtown hotel ballroom. Business owners, community leaders, families, volunteers. People talked about scholarships, housing projects, and local charities. It wasn't about showing wealth. It was about sharing it. Oliver quietly leaned toward me. You belong here. I used to think people like us didn't. You still think you're the same man. Aren't I? He smiled. No, you become someone stronger. Emma had been invited because the charity supported therapy dogs for veterans. She happily greeted guests while children gathered around her. One little boy hugged her neck. She's the nicest dog ever. I smiled. She'd probably agree. Mia laughed. I think she's the real guest of honor. While speaking with another donor, I noticed someone standing across the room. Victoria. For a moment, neither of us moved. She looked different. Not broken. Not glamorous. Simply peaceful. She walked toward me slowly. Hi, Ethan. Hi. She glanced at Emma. She still remembers everyone. Emma walked over, accepted a gentle pat on the head, then calmly returned to my side. Victoria smiled softly. She's loyal. She always was. She nodded. I finally understand that. We stood in comfortable silence. No anger. No bitterness. Just two people whose lives had gone in different directions. Finally she spoke. I rented a small apartment. How are you doing? I'm working. That's good. It is. She smiled faintly. I've learned how to cook. I laughed. That's impressive. I used to think food came from restaurants. We both smiled. Then her expression became thoughtful. You know something? What? I spent years believing the biggest house meant the happiest life. I listened quietly. I believed expensive cars prove success. She looked around the room. I thought money could replace almost anything. I already knew where she was going. I was wrong. She looked directly into my eyes. The things I threw away were the only things that actually mattered. I didn't interrupt. She continued. I had loyalty. She looked at Emma. I had someone who believed in me. Then she looked back at me. I had a husband who would have stood beside me through anything. A tear rolled down her cheek, and I traded all of it for appearances. I took a slow breath. We all make choices. I know. She smiled sadly. I just wish I had made better ones. A volunteer called my name from across the room. Nathan, they're ready for presentation. I'll be there. Victoria stepped back. I won't keep you. I nodded. It was good seeing you. It was... She hesitated. Thank you. For what? For letting me apologize. I smiled gently. I hope you're happy someday. She looked around the room. I think happiness looks different than I used to believe. I think you're right. She extended her hand. Instead, I gave her a brief hug. Not because we belonged together, but because neither of us needed to carry hatred anymore. When we stepped apart, she smiled. Goodbye. Goodbye, Victoria. She walked away. This time, I didn't feel sadness. Only gratitude for the lesson our story had become. The presentation ended with applause. Our company pledged funding for affordable housing projects. Oliver shook my hand. You've done well. We all have. Mia stood beside me. So. Any regrets? I looked around the ballroom. Dad laughing with Oliver. Lily playing with Emma. Children smiling. Friends who had become family. People who respected me without asking me to become someone else. Then I looked down. Emma rested quietly against my leg, just as she had done on the worst day of my life. I smiled. No, none. I regret the pain. But I don't regret the man it helped me become. Mia slipped her hand into mine. Neither of us said anything else. We didn't need to. That night, I drove home beneath a sky full of stars. Emma slept in the passenger seat, like she always did after busy days. When we reached the house, she woke up, stretched, and happily followed me to the front door. I unlocked it. The warm lights welcomed us inside. I placed my keys on the table. Emma curled up near the fireplace with a contented sigh. I looked around my home. Not the biggest, not the most expensive, but built with honesty, filled with peace, protected by people who truly cared. 1 year earlier, I believed my wife had taken everything from me. Standing there, I finally understood the truth. She had only taken the things money could buy. The one thing she could never replace was everything that truly mattered. My self-respect, my purpose, my peace, the people who stayed, the love that expected nothing in return, and the man I became after losing everything. I smiled at Emma. Come on, girl. She stood and walked beside me as we disappeared deeper into the house. For the first time in many years, I wasn't searching for a better life anymore. I was already living it.